Okay, we are back with some more poetry. I've got Ava and Reese here, if you want to say hello. And we are going to look at two poems that we previously enjoyed in two other videos. So we have The Fat Cat and we have I Have a Little Frog. And in previous videos we read these together, we used silly voices. And then I also encouraged you to find a journal or a notebook and to create a poetry journal and to record these two poems in your own journal. And you can read them and reread them and practice them. And as I share more poetry with you, you can collect more poetry in your poetry journal, and you can even try and memorize one or act one out. So just some fun things you can do with poems. Today what we're going to do is we are going to read each of these one more time, or if you're just joining us and you haven't done any of the poems, you get to read them for the first time. And then we're going to compare and contrast. So we will talk about what comparing and contrasting means as soon as we're done reading them. So let's first read The Fat Cat. So Ava and Reese, I'm going to ask you to join with me, okay? Here we go. The Fat Cat. I had a cat who was so fat, he could not even sit on his mat. He had a hat that did not fit. He put it on and then it split. Okay, so that's the fat cat. Now, over here we have I Have a Little Frog. So if you girls need to move over here, feel free to. Try not to bump the cabinet that's holding the computer recording us. Okay, here we go. This is called I Have a Little Frog. All right, here we go. I have a little frog. I have a little frog. His name is Tiny Tim. I put him in the bathtub to see if he could swim. He drank up all the water. He gobbled up the soap. And when he tried to talk, he had a bubble in his throat. Okay, so we've got two poems here. And what we're going to do is we are going to compare and contrast. And what compare and contrast means is we are going to find things that are similar and we're going to find things that are different in these two poems. So we can think about the content or what the poems are about, but we can also think about the craft or the author's techniques in using or creating this poem. So things that the author does in the poem, of ways of writing it, or we could also talk about things that are included, or the subject or the topic or the main idea of the poems. If you have seen this before, you have probably done comparing and contrasting before. So this is called a Venn diagram, where you use two circles if you're comparing two things, and they meet in the middle. And in the middle is where we put the things that are alike, or the things that are the same about the two things that you're comparing. Over here is where they are contrasting. Contrasting means different. So this means that it would be just true about I Have a Little Frog. And over here would mean it's just true about the fat cat. And in the middle, it would be things that are alike between the two poems. So at the top of this one, we will write I have... Oops, I'm getting ahead of myself. I have...
What's an A too?
A little frog. And over here is going to be the fat cat.
Are you going to put same in the middle?
You know what? I'm not. Because when we use a Venn diagram, we just know that we label each circle, and then we know we put what's true just about the fat cat here, what's true about I Have a Little Frog here, and what's true about both of them is in the middle. Okay, so let's just start doing some sharing.
Okay.
What is one thing? Let's have Reese share first. What is one thing that you notice?
3.
Okay, start with 1.
The fat cat is a cat.
Okay, so this one is about a cat.
A frog.
Is I have a little frog about a cat?
No.
No. So this one's about a cat, and I'm going to use just little dots or bullets, they're called. So this is about a cat, and this one is about a frog.
And in the middle,
Okay, one more, and then we'll let Ava share something that's the same.
yes.
Okay, what's true about both of them?
They are both animals.
Okay, so they're both about animals.
Or like reptile kind of thing.
Well, a cat's not a reptile.
Well, I know what a frog
You could say a reptile and maybe a mammal here.
Yeah.
Okay, how about Ava?
How many bullets are we going to do in
As many as we can come up with. That's the things that are different and things that are the same. So what do you have to share?
I have reptile and mammal.
Okay, reptile and mammal.
I didn't think about
Okay, how about anything different? How about, because we know, we could say this is a mammal and this is a reptile, but what else do you notice about?
Oh, the frog's name is Tiny.
Okay,
Tiny Tim.
okay. We do know that, but is there anything really to contrast it?
No.
No.
This one's fat and this one got a bubble in its stomach.
Okay, one's fat and one has a bubble. Okay, do they both have problems?
Yeah.
Okay, so we could put that they both have problems. Both animals, and then we'll talk about animals
I have one for that one. The
have
middle.
problems. So what's the cat's problem?
That his hat split.
Okay, or that he's
fat.
He's fat, and that's a problem because he can't fit on his mat, and he also split his hat, right?
Yeah.
So his problem is he's fat. Okay? And over here, what's the frog's problem?
He has a bubble in
His problem
Is
His problem is he
has
has a bubble
in his throat.
in his throat. Now, I know at home, for those of you watching, this is really small and you may not be able to read it very well, but hopefully with us talking about it and me saying it as I write, that you're able to at least know what I'm writing, even if you can't see it. So far we know that the fat cat is about a cat and that his problem is he's fat. And that's different than I have a little frog, because it's about a frog and his problem is that he has a bubble in his throat. Two things that are the same about these is that they are both about animals, and they're about animals that have problems. Okay, something else?
I have one in the middle. They both start with I.
Okay, both poems start with I. This one is I had a cat, and this is I have a little frog. So they both are talking about things I have. Okay?
And then one for each one.
They both start with the word I, and I'm just going to put I. So this one's I had, and this is I have, but both talking about that. Okay?
Cat starts with the at the heading.
Okay, let's talk about something about the way that the author wrote these. So, I had a cat who was so fat he could not even sit on his mat. What did we talk about this type of poem? The author used rhyming for this poem, right? Let's go over to I have a little frog and see if we can see if this one rhymes at all. I have a little frog. His name is Tiny Tim. I put him in the bathtub to see if he could swim. Is there a little rhyming?
Yeah.
His name is Tiny Tim, to see if he could swim. So there's a little rhyming, but maybe not quite as much, because when it says He drank up all the water and gobbled up the soap. And when he tried to talk, he had a bubble in his throat. So soap and throat maybe don't rhyme as well, but Tim and swim does. So they both have some rhyming, but this one doesn't quite rhyme as much as this one does. So we're going to put some rhyming.
Wow, we spelled out that quick.
Yes, we did. I've got a question.
What?
In another video, we talked about the author's purpose. We talked about why does an author write things, and we talked about sometimes they're trying to persuade us. Other times they're trying to inform us. And other times they're trying to entertain us.
Wait, isn't that spelled with an A?
No, entertain. So why do we think the authors wrote these poems? Is there a different purpose between these, or do we think they have the same purpose? Persuade means to try and convince us or talk us into something. Inform means they're giving us information. Or entertain means they're just trying to allow us to enjoy something. So what do you think, Reese?
I think they're trying. Wait, what's persuade?
Persuade means they're trying to convince us or talk us into something.
No, I think it's entertain.
I think it's entertain too. And I would say both of them are written to entertain us, to have us just enjoy a silly poem. So I'm just going to write entertain. And I'm going to go a little bit into the other circle, and that's okay. So we've come up with a lot of things they have in common. Ava, do you have something else that we could add?
I want to tell them that persuade, inform, and entertain. If you write them in order, it's supposed to go persuade, inform, and entertain. It spells pie.
Exactly. So Ava is pointing out that if you look at the P-I-E, it spells the word pie. So it's a helpful way to remember the different options for an author's purpose. So the author writes something with a purpose or with a reason. And these are the three most common ways or reasons why authors write what they do. So either to persuade, inform, or entertain. And if it helps to remember, just think of the word pie. You can think of whether you like apple pie or chocolate pie or pumpkin pie, but think of the word pie, right? Okay. Anything else different that you guys notice? Things that
No.
you know, I would say not either. Maybe there's more rhyming here, and not as much here. We could put maybe more rhyming.
On that other side, you could put less rhyme.
Less rhyming. One thing that I also noticed about these two poems is they both were written with 8 lines. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 8 lines. And then this one had 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they kind of separated it in that way for the rhythm of the poem. I have a little frog. His name is Tiny Tim. I put him in the bathtub to see if he could swim. He drank up all the water and gobbled up the soap. And when he tried to talk, he had a bubble in his throat. So that one has the rhythm of 4 lines and 4 lines. And this one does too. I had a cat who was so fat, he could not even sit on his mat. He had a hat that did not fit. He put it on and then it split. So 4 and 4, and I can just add this up, maybe just 8. I can just put 8 lines. Okay, so it also had 8 lines. So we found a lot of similarities between these two poems. And there are some differences in the content. One's about a cat, one's about a frog. They both have problems, but they're different problems. One has more rhyming, one has a little less rhyming. So lots of good comparing and contrasting with these two poems today. We will be back in the future with some more poems to add to your poetry journal if you're creating that poetry journal. And we'll use some more silly faces or more silly voices to read those poems. So we will see you next time.